mask is called a Venturi mask. And here, what's nice about these is that you can adjust the flow and the percentage of oxygen based on your valves. They come with different colored valves that you can interchange. And so, if you don't know what they each mean, it'll tell you on the inside of the valve, okay? And you can adjust them from like 6 liters all the way up to 12. And it'll tell you the percentage there as well. Generally speaking, the person who will adjust this will either be your respiratory therapist or the physician. Please remember, oxygen is a medication. You need a doctor's order for it, unless obviously it's an emergency. Like if your patient's not breathing, don't call the doctor and be like, do you want oxygen? You can bag them, that's fine. But if they are sitting there awake or oriented and you're not sure, you're going to want an order for that because you can over-oxygenate people. Alrighty, I don't have a partial rebreather. You can look at a picture of it in your book, but it's very similar to a non-rebreather, okay? So here you can see we have a bag, right? And then this hooks up to the wall. You can do 10 to 15 liters of O2. Personally, if they're on a non-rebreather, I say crank it up all the way because this is 100% oxygen. That is 5 times more than what you need just to function, right? So if someone is so sick that they have to get a non-rebreather, just go ahead and crank it up all the way because they're sick. This is a heavy form of oxygen. The reason why it has a bag is because the O2 will fill up this bag as a reserve. So every time they breathe in, they'll breathe in reserve O2 here, and they'll never not have 100%. Because if this wasn't here, they would only get the oxygen whatever flowed in at what time, right? It's harder for it to keep up the flow without the bag. So that's the reason why, okay? It's an oxygen reserve. Now, if you have this plugged up to the wall, and you've got it cranked, and your bag's not inflating, is that normal? No, because it's supposed to be inflated, right? So you want to consider, is my tubing kinked, is my bag kinked, or do I need more flow? Just know that when you have a bag like this, it shouldn't be more than like half deflated at a time. It will deflate when the patient breathes because they're sucking the O2 out of it. But it should never be flat and completely deflated. That means there's no oxygen reserve for them, okay? One thing I'll touch on briefly, just because I don't have any other masks, unfortunately, to show you. Like a face tent is nice because it's open. It's not as claustrophobic. So if you have a patient who feels claustrophobic, you can do an open mask and it literally holds the oxygen like this, okay? This right here is a meter for capnography or CO2 measurement. What you need to know with this is that this is really good for patients who are recovering from surgery, they've had anesthesia, they have a patient PCA, like control pump. And the reason why is when you breathe out, obviously you're blowing off CO2, right? Well, we want to measure that when patients are at risk for respiratory depression. Because if they're not breathing, there's no CO2 to measure, right? So if it drops too low, this can warn us, hey, they're getting over-medicated. So it's hard to see where y'all are at. You can come up and look at it later, but it's a nasal prong and it's got a bulb on the end that catches the CO2 and that's how it measures it. Okay, so if you have a PCA pump, what does the nurse need to add to monitor this patient? End-tidal CO2 or capnography, okay? And oftentimes your PCA pumps will come with one as like a reminder. It won't work without it.